Fellow alchemists, welcome back. I'd like to actually start a new series about Rust. So we have actually started working with a little bit of Rust recently. And I know that our core audience is really all about elixir. Now, don't think that we're not all about, that we basically are moving away from elixir. That's not true at all. In fact, that's the first tool that we look for when we want to build a new system. But there is sometimes when we want to, get some more raw power that elixir just cannot give us. There's a couple of things elixir does not do as well, and actually even most programming languages don't do as well when you're using a higher level language like elixir, Python, Ruby, etc. And so Rust, I believe, is a fantastic language for something like this. If you look at a company called Discord, they're actually using elixir, but they're also using Rust in some of their very, very demanding services. And I believe this will only increase as Rust becomes more and more stable and more interesting features are added to it. And so I wanted to start a new series, and I want to start to show how you can actually use Rust, because Rust is quite different than other programming languages that I've ever used. One is that they have this idea of a borrowing system and ownership, and that's what this video is going to be all about, is a little bit of a kind of a way to not trip yourself up when it comes to the Rust borrowing system. Now, what I want to do is I want to first create a function, and so this is a Rust application. So that means that you have to have a main function. Now, in our main function, we're going to have a variable, so to be name, and a string. I'm not going to go into why I'm going to do this, but I probably will in the future. So my name, Alan. And let's say that we're going to have a function that will say hello. It will take a name, which is a string, and it's going to print out hello and that name. That's rather straightforward, right? And so if we use our say hello function, we pass in our name, and I'm going to use cargo run to actually run this application. You'll see everything looks fine. Well, here's something that I think will probably mix people up. And what actually happens is that Rust has this idea of ownership. Now, once we put this variable inside of this function, now this function is now the owner of this variable. And I can show you, once you actually pass ownership, that variable that you used before is no longer actually useful. Or sorry, it can no longer be used. So let's say that I want to say name is equal to, and then pass it a name. You'll see over here, there will be an error that pops up, but I can go ahead and try to run it, and it will fail immediately because it cannot even compile. And it's saying that the value borrowed here after move. So when we do this, we're actually moving the string inside. Now, there's a couple ways we can solve this. One is that we can do a clone when we call that function. And a clone will just make a copy, right? Make a clone. And you can see the error goes away. I can run my function. Everything seems to work fine. Now, this is not the most optimal way, because what actually happens with a clone is that it's actually going to make a whole copy, like a deep kind of like copy. So then in memory, I don't have two references to the same piece of data like I would in say something like elixir. I actually have two versions of this, which is maybe not the most optimal. Now, because we don't actually need to edit anything, and this is a very short-lived function, what we can do is that we can, instead of taking a string directly, we can take a reference to a string. So basically that's how you can borrow this. So this one says I just want to borrow the name and use it, and then you can have it back. And so to return our reference, we again use the ampersand symbol. And everything works just fine. So because we have the system of ownership, what actually happens over here is that this main scope owns the name, And then we borrow the name to the say hello function. And that lets us able to basically keep the name over here. So this is kind of a very, very quick introduction and a way to kind of not trip yourself up when you're using when you're using Rust. So this is Alan from Plangora. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye. Hi. Please feel free to ask us any questions about Elixir, Flutter, or anything else in programming. Here's our YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll answer your questions every Friday. Ya mantai ge dak man all. Yo wenti ji da wen wo.